Okay, so let's continue with other aspects of your research that are relevant to ethical issues. So the data collection, that process when you collect the data is also very important. Like there are a few things that we want to explore. Like for example, always make sure that your respondents know that they can withdraw their participation from your project. I know that sounds like a risk because you put so much time and effort, and if they decide to leave, you have to obey. But it is something very important. Like maybe something happens and then they need to cancel their participation. So it's very important that you mention that. Usually you mention that in the consent form, but it's very important that you say it, right? It's something very critical. And it's always a risk, but again, if I go back, I think 99% of the cases there is no issue, but it is still a possibility, and you have to give them the chance that if something happens and they change their minds, they are able to do it. So it's very important. Also, if it is possible to not reveal, to anonymize the kind of the identities of the organizations and the people that you are studying. It is not the ideal, especially if you are doing a qualitative study, because it takes out some context from your data, but it is something that some people will care about, like especially if it's a sensitive topic or something. Like for example, in my PhD thesis, I had to anonymize my cases because I kind of unpack how they manage research and development in biotech companies, and they didn't want to be connected to their strategies. Like they thought that someone will read my thesis and maybe kind of use their techniques, which I think no one would read my thesis for that. But anyway, they asked me to anonymize it. So you can offer that, and then there is no problem with that. One way to do it is to change the name. Like you literally pick up a random name that doesn't exist. So if you were studying, for example, Coca-Cola, you can say like, this is company beverage, happy beverages, right? You give some, and again, depending on the level of how do you want to anonymize your sources or your organization and the people, you can even say company A as that, right? But you kind of take out context of your case, like maybe you are not even allowed, or the people wouldn't be happy if you say they are a beverage company. So maybe you can't even say beverage. So then you are taking out a lot of context, and then at some point you can even say, well, if it's so much, then I maybe do another thing, because it's then I won't be able to unpack the context, and it's not going to work with my qualitative design. So anyway, you can, and if it is necessary, you can make organizations and people anonymous, so no problem with that. And then related to the data analysis, when you start analyzing your data, explain all the time how you do it, especially if you are doing it, well, in both qualitative and quantitative, but explain what method are you using. If it is, for example, a t-test, or if it is a regression, why is that justified? And if it is a case study, why a case study? Why comparative case study? Why is that related to the research question? How do you do it? Again, it's not only now why, but also how. How did you do the regression? Which software did you use? Where did you keep your data? Is everything electronically? Did you transcribe? All the how is in here. Also report everything, like how many questionnaires, how many interviews, if you send surveys, how many people responded, how many people didn't respond, how many people respond something that didn't work and you have to take it away. All the time mention that. And also state how will you manage the data, like, because the data, are you going to destroy the data after this? Is it going to be public, or is it going to be privately stored because it's sensitive? Again, these kind of things, it's all about being transparent. I think that the best way to do this is to take a look at another thesis, or take a look at other papers where they state this, because you don't need a lot. You need like probably, well, the thing is that this should be in the methodology section because you talk about your method. But for example, some of these things can be probably also in the methodology, but maybe, I don't know, like maybe in the conclusion or maybe in an appendix, you can add more things. So the best way to do it is actually look at actual research and see how they are doing it. It's not the most difficult thing, not at all, but you need to be careful, right? And you shouldn't be creative here, like just play it safe. be transparent. Like that's the main thing. When things are blurry in a research, that's when the reader says like, this doesn't make sense, or there is something weird in there because the writer is not transparent. And maybe it's not the case. Maybe there's nothing wrong, but it gives that feeling if you are not being transparent. Why wouldn't you be transparent if everything is all right? Why wouldn't you exploit that to improve the validity and the reliability of your research? It's already there. It's just writing 2 paragraphs about it, and then the whole quality of your research will improve drastically. So why not put it in there? We tend to think that there's something wrong. So try not to do it. Use it on your benefit. Try to be as transparent as possible in every aspect: data analysis, data collection, research design, research question, research problem. Be transparent and show that there is no problem in there, that everything is fine, hopefully fine. And it should be fine. If there is a problem, again, reflect that you should change. Like, again, like if it doesn't work, like if you feel there is something wrong in there, it's better to take one step back and change a little bit. And other ethical issues, these are more practical things. So in your thesis, be honest about what you read, about what you say, about what you write in there. Like, don't try to claim false things, and it's very easy to find it. So don't try to do more than what you actually did, or to write more than what you actually did. Again, be honest and be transparent. This is kind of the worst thing that can happen: plagiarism. And plagiarism is maybe because if we see more and more plagiarism in research, then the whole scientific world loses validity and reliability, and no one is going to trust researchers and scientists. So that's why we have to punish plagiarism, and we have to punish this kind of bad ethical behaviors, because otherwise the whole idea of doing research just disappears from society. Like, no one is going to trust anyone because we are not being ethical and transparent. So plagiarism is one of the worst things that you can do. So make sure that you reference everyone, that you and it's always the best way to do it, because you are a student. So if you come up with a Nobel Prize winner idea, that's very, how can I say, like, that's almost impossible that you can kind of support that idea. Like, if you have something as good as that, it is based on a lot of research that is in there, right? So you should kind of underpin your claims from previous research and reference these authors, like reference that knowledge, because remember, you are adding up a little bit more from all that we know. So you need to put everything that we know so far and then situate your extra. Don't try to say that you are solving everything, because that's not true, and you will not be able to do it, and it's impossible. So build everything that is below your extra contribution. So, and that is based on other research. So all the time, give authorship and don't plagiarize other people. And here in authorship is the same thing. If you are doing this in teams, make sure that you are working, and you all know about this, because then in the defense, then you can fail because maybe one person doesn't know what you did and it's going to fail. So if someone didn't do the job, then it's going to affect you as well, because you are saying that that person contributed, but if actually that didn't happen, you have to be careful. And finally, the ethical relationship with your supervisor, because we are all humans, so we can be friends or we can be enemies. I think 98% of the time is friends, but anyway, like try to keep it professional, but it's impossible. Like, we are not robots or something, so there's going to be emotions in there. So my well, it really depends on the supervisor, but I think that you can have a professional relationship, but also at the same time a human relationship. So take care of your own emotions and the supervisor's emotions in there. Like, don't think like both of you are robots, so think as humans. And again, it's because your supervisor is so important. Also think about that relationship. Like, your supervisor is going to affect your thesis because of what he or she knows and the methodologies and all of these kind of things. So also how do you deal with these kind of things? This is something that you don't have to write in your thesis, but it's more like a practical issue. So I think kind of this, like with your friends but with your other student, if you are a group, or and here with the supervisor. And finally, conclusion. So include in your thesis a section about the ethical things, like maybe it will be also in the methodology, but make sure that you have a part of your thesis where you talk about how do you handle ethical considerations. And in the methodology, be extremely transparent, because it will add a lot of validity and reliability to your research, but also it will kind of aid any issues with ethical related things. So I think that is the end of this lecture. As I said, it's not so complicated, but it's extremely important that we know about this.